Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie. I am the senior editor here. And today I'm delighted to be joined by 5 excellent customer experience analysts to run through all the latest news from the space. Yesterday, I am delighted to be joined by Zeus Kerravala, the principal analyst at ZK Research, Rebecca Wettemann, CEO and principal analyst at Valoir, Simon Harrison, founder and CEO of Actionary, Michael Fauscette, the founder, CEO and chief analyst at Arion Research, and Martin Schneider, VP and principal analyst at Constellation Research. So it's great to have you all join me today, and let's get right on into the news. And I want to start with this story from NICE, as it is named a new CEO, Scott Russell, who will replace Barak Eilam from the start of 2025. And Russell has spent 14 years at SAP until now, most recently as the company's global chief revenue officer. And it seems great that somebody with such experience is coming into the CCaaS industry, but I'd like to capture all of your thoughts on this one. And Rebecca, I don't know, maybe I could start with you on this.
Sure. So interesting, brings a lot of enterprise app and sort of revenue experience. I question about product experience and his sort of vision for the CX space. As we know, SAP has had somewhat of a checkered past, to put it nicely, with its CX story. So understanding what he's going to be able to bring the board, not just from a revenue generating perspective, but from a thought leadership perspective, particularly as we see CX sort of evolve from the contact center CCaaS to a much broader picture.
Yeah, I will say from that though, when you look at SAP's ability to kind of remain relevant and remain, in a position of actually selling something, really in a transformative mode, right? In going into a very large install base and selling cloud, selling, analytics, kind of being able to go, kind of what Oracle's done an even better job of, right? But, and NICE kind of needs to do that a little bit, right? And given, some of its, and kind of how do you get the older install base into a more modern subscription, kind of doing all that. So I think there's a little bit of positive there, but I do echo your sentiment, Rebecca, when you talk about innovation, right? And I think that's really where you want to, you want to focus on, like, is that pace of innovation going to either, do I say continue when you were talking about NICE, or do we say, like, where's it going to go, in that regard?
I actually thought the SAP hiring was more due to the fact that when you think of all software companies, be it cloud-based or on-prem, they get big, and when I'm talking big, I mean over 10 billion in revenue big, when they make the pivot to platform. Right. In fact, you can't think of one software company that actually managed to become big just, by being kind of a vertically integrated product. And so SAP's got a big ecosystem around it. It made that pivot a long time ago. And I think for NICE, who's, a little over 4 billion now, what's their next app going to be? I think they're going to have to become a lot more platform-like, road and a bigger ecosystem, work with a lot more third parties. And I think, the SAP background, and I mean, they're a little long in the tooth now, but they were one of the most successful companies at that. And so I think the processes and things they have in place will serve NICE well as they look at kind of their next wave of growth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rebecca is. No, sorry. I think Rebecca's right as far as the CX piece is concerned. I mean, that is concerning a little bit, not as much perhaps background there. But, if you think about the other stuff, the cloud transition, digital transformation, digital first, all those kind of initiatives that have been pushed from SAP, and certainly he's been deeply involved in all of those kinds of issues with customers. I mean, I think that's actually pretty good benefit. And then, the other piece you mentioned, I think, just the fact that he has so many connections and partner connections and, all these deep relationships from his SAP work that can perhaps provide some interesting new opportunities for them going forward that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise. So
I think the ecosystem thing is such a big deal, because actually, to many of your points here around where you go next, realizing the value, significant success so far by NICE. They've started to dip their toe in the UC market as well. But when you look at when I talk to anyone at SAP in the product team, they're passionate about the completeness of the solution, the ITSM, the ESM, the way that all connects as part of the entirety of what you're trying to solve out there. I mean, kind of a little bit. I believe we're going to talk about Salesforce, but this connection with what's going on in the retailers. Expanding into how can you make more of this connect in a more effective way as part of an experience. He's going to be bringing a lot of that kind of forethought with him, but also these guys. It's quite surprising. Again, in recent chats, they're reinventing some of the kind of technology. You'd think you've got a decision to make. You either go, no, it's just going to stay that way. It's been too long. It's going to be too hard to try and move that to a pure cloud platform. Or you say, no, you know what? We're going to go for it. And we're going to achieve what took us 5-10 years in 2 years. And they're the guys that kind of do that. They kind of, they do go for that. So I feel like there's some exciting things that are being going on in SAP that perhaps may convert to your point, Zeus, how NICE moves forward from this point forwards. It's interesting that this guy spent he was in Singapore for 11 years. So he's got a lot of. In fact, if you ever listen to, I only recently heard him. He's got an Aussie accent. Very, very interesting the way he says. He says generative AI. It's very interesting to listen to this guy. It's actually quite an engaging character. So I think there's some interesting things there. I think there's a lot he can bring from a technology perspective. I think from a global coverage, understanding the difference in markets, demonstrating their success, and he's not afraid to make bold decisions by the looks of it. The guy is sitting on the SAP executive board, and this company just keeps moving forwards.
And Zeus, I think you're spot on about the platform piece as well. Like NICE, where it goes next, if you look at, for example, what Genesys has done from a platform perspective in terms of building out the ecosystem in terms of building out that message, that's going to be really important, particularly as we realize there's a lot of NICE's customer base that still needs that compelling push to move to cloud.
Yeah, and the one thing NICE has been good at too is when they displace an on-prem system, they sell a bunch of other products in there with it, right? And so, you think of that shift to platform, you want to sell more capabilities that you've grown, but also your ecosystem, has brought in. So they've done a nice job getting to this point, and I just think that his skill set coming from SAP is, I applaud Barak for actually, recognizing this and moving aside and letting somebody come in with big enterprise software experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of really great points covered there. It's also interesting, actually, that NICE has, compared to certain other rivals, hasn't made that many co-announcements with kind of big CRM vendors. If you look at kind of Genesys and Five9, both have recently made quite big announcements with Salesforce. Genesys is also with ServiceNow. So it might be interesting to see if NICE now also kind of starts to kind of make small co-innovation deals with CRM vendors too, especially as the CCaaS and CRM space kind of converge a little bit. So lots of great conversations there, but let's switch gears and talk a little bit about NICE's CCaaS rival, Five9. Now it's been quite a big month for Five9. First, it announced that it surpassed the $1 billion milestone in annual cloud revenue. But then, kind of rather unfortunately, it laid off 7% of its workforce earlier this week. And in amongst that too, it's also announced this acquisition, the kind of agreement on an acquisition of Acqueon, the so-called revenue execution platform. So a lot going on at Five9. But Zeus, what do you first and foremost think about the acquisition, and then kind of everything else that's happened?
New head of sales too. It's been quite a last couple of weeks for the company. I really did like the Acqueon acquisition. First, they were already a technology partner for them, and if you look at some of their acquisitions, it's almost like a try before you buy, right? So it works. Now they're in the revenue execution segment, which is more on the sales side, and I think this addresses, to me, the longer thesis of CCaaS is not just being a product for agents, but actually being a product for anybody that touches the customer, and sales being one of those. And so there's just a few implications here. First, just from an overall AI play, right? If you're trying to address CX right? I've said this before, that silos of data leads to fragmented insights. And so if you have your sales information in one silo and your customer information on another, and et cetera, you get a bunch of fragmented insights. And so this gives them more data with which to apply their AI to. Their tagline is bring joy to CX. And so they're using AI to do that. So it makes sense that way. I think more importantly, though, is it helps them continue to expand their TAM. And I think it's something they did touch on in their earnings call. And it's something I know that I've talked to their CEO and CFO about it, Mike and Barry, where they get a little frustrated when they talk to Wall Street analysts, where everyone seems to think that AI is going to kill the entire CCaaS segment. But I think what it does is it lets you sell to a much broader audience, not just agents, salespeople, customer success. And so Acqueon, I think, is, really, an important tool to be able to address salespeople. And so I liked it for that reason. Some of the other things you brought up, I think, they kind of hicked up this quarter. I think, if you look at everybody else that plays in the CCaaS space, they all put up good quarters. They were the one, actually, their quarter itself was good. Their guide was weak. And then they changed out their head of sales, and they brought headcount down. One of the surprising points was that this was the first layoff ever in the company's history. And, given sort of the rise up during the pandemic and the rise down, I was a little surprised they hadn't done that before. But I think, right now, when you look at the news, they hit $1 billion in revenue. They have a new sales leader. They right-sized their staff, and they brought in Acqueon to be able to address a broader audience. And so I think they're prepping for, again, their next phase, which is $1 billion and north. But I really did like the acquisition, and I think some of the other stuff, it's unfortunate it overshadowed it.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's an interesting one because it gives them some real opportunities to expand that they didn't have too. I mean, like the fact that you get out of the box integrations to electronic health records and the sort of footprint in the healthcare space that is an explanation. Yeah, I particularly like that. And the other thing is it just gives them a better story when you add in that whole revenue piece, right? It makes that whole story much more compelling for them. So I thought it was a good announcement.
I think it's really, really great move, because when you actually look at when you look at the revenue side of it and really look at it, that it kind of to Zeus's point where you're kind of talking about the fractured stuff. But if you can create that single bandwidth of communication for the entire journey, therefore you can actually integrate workflow to orchestrate and engage at the right time, kind of right place, right channel, do all these types of things. But in addition, right, you're fending off and being innovative against not just NICE and Avaya and other people that you would look at from the CCaaS side of things, but now you're actually having a compelling story of we're entrenched already here. Do you even need Gong anymore? Do you even need, some of these other products that are coming out from the revenue optimization side of things, coming from call recording, AI analytics against that? Because you can lay a lot of that stuff onto your communications platform if it's full journey, and get that analytics view and that data view that isn't fractured, to Zeus's point. So I think it's a really, really compelling and interesting move to position Five9 in a new and really exciting way for them. That's probably, when you look at their kind of legacy competition right now with that, I don't see anyone really doing that well or even messaging to that well. It's a really interesting differentiation that I don't think anyone else has right now. And with one kind of quick, already integrated, product pickup, pretty smart if you ask me.
Yeah, and they partner with them. Acqueon actually partners with some of their competitors. It'll be interesting to see if they.
And that's one of those key themes that there's kind of two key themes that this highlights for you. What first to say is, you already said this, was nobody's just doing an acquisition today, right? They're all doing acquisitions of partners. The sort of try before you buy trend that Salesforce started with its ecosystem, that's the norm, which means a lot less risk for acquisition, a lot lower integration costs, a lot more cultural alignment and fit before the deal is ever inked, which is great for the industry. But I think the other thing that's going on here, and we're seeing it across all the CCaaS vendors, is everybody recognizes that butts and seats cannot be the pricing model moving forward. Right. So I've got to start to think about whether it's, what Five9 is doing with Genius and enabling virtual agents, or, what any of the other folks are doing. Everybody recognizes that where the street's concerned, we cannot continue to talk about agents as a multiple for revenue, because that agent number is going down. And there are all these other things that I can do now to generate revenue, around vertical solution, around virtual agents, and that sort of thing that have to be a part of this evolving pricing model moving forward. So whether you call it consumption based or value based or whatever it is, everybody's having to rethink now their pricing models. And the street's going to have to really think about how they think about the valuations of these companies as well, because the revenue models that they've built those spreadsheets on are going to change.
Yeah, they're far less predictable, obviously, and far harder to even model, right? Because you can look at demographic data when you're looking at SaaS per month seat count, and you can figure out TAMs and figure out things like that. But when we think of consumption and we think of value and actual things like that, it was kind of like when we first started looking at the e-commerce space. We didn't know how much was going to be moving over to that, and how do we actually figure that out when you're looking at 1.5% of what, right, is what these companies are going to make, right? So it's kind of the same idea, right? Like how many, what is going to be the consumption, what's going to be the uptake, and what is going to be the perception of value that people are like, yeah, take my money because this is really what we needed, right? So it'll be interesting to see how this changes a lot of valuations.
And for the most part, the industry's done a terrible job of explaining that.
No, look, hey, in 2007 and 6, we weren't doing a great job of explaining the value of SaaS, and it turned out to be, a subscription model. Like the street freaked out about that when companies, how many good companies didn't make it through their trough of going down in revenue when they were moving from perpetual to subscription? They either got acquired or they went out of business or whatever. And their stocks just tanked because people didn't understand that, a 3 to 6 quarter drop in revenue meant that you were going to go up and up and up and at least have the same revenue forever, theoretically, right? Like way better than the perpetual model, but the street didn't figure that out for a while, right? And good companies with good products suffered. So we're going to see some of that now, because these are younger, some of these AI companies, some of these guys with with less entrenchment of other types of solid revenue streams, they're going to get a little goofy. So we're going to see what happens.
I think this is addressing something fundamental, though, when it comes to CX. You can't just slap a CX badge on the side of your CCaaS box and go, we've got a CX solution now. There's some real news just to light here. Sales, marketing, customer service, and digital commerce are things you need to be able to talk about, right? To say you've got to truly, when you're looking at these businesses trying to service their customers like us, it's not just about inbound customer service. And that's the value that's created by Five9. And so I think this is, when you look at the investment, it's the right way to go. It's to start, realizing the strap line, bringing joy to CX. This is the way that we should start to see more of these vendors, trying to increase their value. Outside in, how are you actually solving the CX problem? Forrester's CX index saying that it's the worst in 10 years. Well, that says to me that when you've got a bunch of CCaaS vendors going, we're doing the best CX things in the world, you kind of go, well, there's something missing here. So, I think this is the right way to go. And I actually think that is to your point, Rebecca, it's really smart, this try before you buy kind of methodology. I think this is a clever way to do it. And it feels like it's less risky and more likely to get what you want to get out of it. Huh? So, yeah, good move.
Yeah, and you can get the solution in market faster too, right? I mean, you're already integrated, so you're not going through that whole integration phase that slows everything down in the old sort of paradigm there.
Yeah, maybe let's talk about now the king of that try before you buy methodology now, and finally talk about Salesforce as our last topic. And they, like Five9, have made an acquisition, and this time they've acquired a company called PredictSpring. Now, PredictSpring is an omni-channel store fulfillment, order management, and inventory solution with various industry-specific solutions for various types of retailers. And yeah, this is another interesting move. And Martin, I'll start with you on this one. What was your kind of reaction to that news?
I mean, it's really, what we're talking about, we use the phrase looking for more TAM, right? I mean, Salesforce needs to expand because a lot of the things we've been talking about are actually applying to them. You need more TAM. Pricing models are changing, and the pricing and packaging is changing. We're going away from, like you said, the butts and seats, and retail is an interesting model because you've got it's not a CRM old bastion of like a ton of saturation, right? Because you really don't have that type of like long-term relationship B2B selling, someone sitting in front of a computer all day making phone calls. It's a different model, but it's one with constrained margins where like any way you can provide value, right, is highly rewarded and coveted, right? And that's where Salesforce can be really interesting in bringing its data cloud and its platform and things together with some of these other functional tools to really create an interesting vertical solution for retail that they've just been missing, right? Like, how do you get closer to your customers in ways that, historically pre-internet, highly anonymous, kind of like we looked at like IRI data, looked at basket data. We didn't know who was buying what. We just kind of knew what was being bought, right? And bought together. And we could, and now we can start to connect demos and loyalty cards, all this kind of stuff. So that triangulation of data and the analytics and the AI and things that we can put against that, Salesforce can really start to present a package that's really compelling for optimization of retail and other optimizations, kind of from where they touch supply chain all the way down through to customer experience. So I think it's fairly interesting, right? Because we're looking at Salesforce having to reinvent itself kind of at the edges in interesting ways because of these looming big changes around how we price and how software companies are going to get paid. I mean, when you look at their virtual agents they even announced this week, right? They're looking at how do we get it, how do we amplify the power of like SDRs who work like regular shifts? Like, how do you turn that into a 24/7 global thing for like a small company who might have like 5 young people trying to get into sales in a room, only able to make calls for 8 hours a day? How do you do sales coaching, in a situation where you're actually able to turn, 1 or 2 people that run sales enablement into a personalized one-to-one coach that can take in everything you do and so really trying to reinvent on consumption and value optimization. And this is one of those ones where you can actually start to see they're trying to better operations rather than just create a system of record, right? So I think, yeah, go ahead.
I like the idea of bringing some realness back to this word omnichannel. That original design, it was digital and physical channels. It was actually how you can combine insights based on us going into a store and then engaging online. And this whole BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store, or buy online or return in store. I live by that now. I mean, if I'm never going to buy anything in the store, I like the idea of being able to search for it, find it, and then go and collect it from the store. It feels good. I don't always trust just getting delivered the right stuff. I mean, obviously, we all have our own preferences in how we shop, but this is a real world, solution. This is about perhaps the opportunity to demonstrate omnichannel done better, done in a real world way that actually solves a lot of the problems we've got in how we're trying to combine the experiences we get through a service center or perhaps a chat with what just happened in the shop down the road. I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's great that they're edging out with this kind of investment. And then you look at the benefits to the staff and the way that it can increase the overall experience in the shops as well. It's again a very clever move. I think increasing the value, bringing some real solutions to some of the things that we're trying to solve in today's exciting and ambitious world of purchasing. So I like this. Yeah. No one's doing it, right?
Well, and the other thing, if you look at this is an interesting kind of playbook that they've been working across all their verticals, right? They've got ventures involved in it. And so they go out, they find these startups that fill holes in their current footprint in the vertical, nurture that relationship for a period of time, pre-integrate it. It's all set. They've proven that this process works. And by the way, with those partners, they do take them in. They go to market directly with those startups, which is not what you always see from a lot of the enterprise vendors in that sort of app exchange model of marketplace. Well, they're actually much closer with these in each of those verticals. And they continue to nurture those relationships and bring more of them in as they find other places to expand. So a great way to expand TAM and a great way to expand your footprint in customers you already have. So, real opportunity for growth, I think, across all the verticals.
Yeah, and they've had, Salesforce has had order management for a long time, and they've helped a lot of their B2B customers shift their strategy from B2C if you look at folks like Fisher and Paykel and Pella and those kind of folks where they were very much B2B, they use Salesforce to start to reach out to that end customer. But at any, as we all know, any Salesforce demo you saw, there's sort of this, and here's the marketing happening, here's the personalization happening in there. Oh, and then the customer has the product, right? And it's like, wait, there's that one little piece that's not there, that's missing. That's an important part for the overall data strategy if we're thinking about sort of understanding the overall view of the customer. So it fills a very important role for them and really gives them a much stronger position beyond sort of their B2B base to fill in that B2C story.
Mm-hmm. And one last thing is, one of the things that I'm seeing around them, and I hope they make this even more explicit. They kind of went with trust. They went with a couple of things, but now as the AI and this move and all these things, it's not, there's very little human replacement that I'm seeing, and rather, like augmenting of like what's already existing, which I think is a good thing, right? Because their customers and other, they don't feel like the people are going to lose jobs. It's just helping, that kind of thing. So I just want to see more of that from Salesforce and everyone. The fact that, this is about supercharging existing, you might keep, there might be an ROI message of like keeping headcount flat or doing more with less, in the sense of like not having to add humans to the equation. But the idea that this isn't bots that are coming to replace people. It's actually, a lot of this is helping how people are doing their business. I think they need to push more of that. Maybe we'll see that at Dreamforce. I don't know, but I think it's important because there does get this kind of like backlash against AI and all this kind of new stuff. So just hoping that they kind of keep on this trend.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, Mark. The promise of AI really is realizing how to do more with less. I mean, that's really the most valuable aspect of it, isn't it? But I also feel like there's so many things that we talk about where we sort of circle around we don't quite precisely hit on what it is we're trying to solve with some of the CX ambition. I know when I go to a store, I get fed up with them asking for my email address now and all my details, and I don't hear anything more from it. And when it comes to staff in the store, don't tend to be as expertly, well versed as I'd like them to be, especially when it comes to something like buying something like one of Zeus's fancy bikes or anything remotely technical. So this is to me, I'm always a fan of the way, if vendors are starting to realize how to actually solve real world problems that benefit me, because I don't think I'm that rare a breed. I'm sure it's going to benefit everyone. So.
Excellent. Well, again, lots of really great discussion there. Part of me also does want to touch on the recent comparison from Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff of Salesforce versus ServiceNow as McDonald's versus Wiener Schnitzel. But we shouldn't get into that. I think maybe this is probably a good place to end today's chat. So thanks to all of the wonderful expert analysts for joining me, and thank you all for watching. Bye for now.